The hall shimmered in gold light, laughter, champagne, a string quartet playing softly near the fountain. Everything looked perfect, and of course, it would. Gloria always made sure her world looked perfect, even when it was built on lies. I stood at the entrance for a moment, watching her move through the crowd. My stepmother. Her diamonds caught the light with every gesture. Her smile wide, her voice louder than everyone else's. She was in her element, commanding, admired, untouchable. No one here knew what she'd done to me. Or how this mansion, her mansion, as she loved to call it, wasn't really hers anymore. The air smelled of lilies and champagne. I hated both. I took a step forward, the sound of my heels echoing on the marble floor. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. It's funny, people always expect revenge to look violent. But real revenge, it's quiet. It walks in wearing silk and smiles. Gloria turned, her laugh fading as her eyes found mine. For a second, she didn't recognize me. Maybe because the last time she saw me, I was 16, drenched in rain, tears, and humiliation. Now I was wearing white, clean, composed, expensive. Good evening, I said softly, stopping at the center of the room. Sorry to interrupt. The room fell silent. Even the music seemed to stop breathing. Gloria blinked, her voice catching in her throat. Evelyn, still remember me? I smiled. I almost didn't recognize the place. You've changed a lot of things, though I notice you kept the chandeliers. My mother loved those. The color drained from her face. My father, standing by the bar, froze completely. He looked like a ghost who'd been caught haunting his own mistakes. Next to him, my stepsister Elena frowned, whispering, Mom, what's going on? Gloria tried to recover. This is private property. You can't just private, I interrupted gently. You should check the paperwork before you finish that sentence. A murmur rippled through the guests. The wedding planner looked confused. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a slim black folder, sliding it onto the nearest table. You really should have read this when your lawyers mailed it last month. The deed transfer, the ownership restoration, everything's been finalized. Gloria stared down at the papers like they were poison. What is this? Proof, I said simply. That this mansion, my mother's house, was never legally yours. All those years ago, when you and father sold it out from under me, you never filed the final approval. The land registry still carried my name. My father's lips parted, his voice shaking. Evelyn, we thought. You didn't think, I said. You just signed whatever she told you to. A heavy silence filled the room, the kind that makes even chandeliers seem to stop shimmering. I turned to face Gloria, fully. You stole my home, you threw me out with nothing, and now you're celebrating inside the one place that was never truly yours. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out, just a shallow breath, the kind people take when their whole world starts to collapse in silence. I smiled faintly. Don't look so surprised, Gloria. You always told me I'd never amount to anything. I just took your advice and built something from nothing. Someone near the back whispered, She owns this place. Another said, Is that real? I didn't care. The crowd didn't matter. The only thing I wanted was that flicker in Gloria's eyes, that small, perfect moment where her certainty cracked. I leaned closer, voice low enough that only she could hear. By the way, the catering invoice is due under my company. I'll make sure you get the bill. Then I turned, walking past her. The sound of my heels filled the hall again, one step at a time, each one heavier than any scream I could have given. And as I reached the door, my voice slipped into the silence, soft but cold. She kicked me out when I was 16, said I wasn't family, so I made sure she'd never forget me. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 28 years old, and I live in Los Angeles, California. Before I tell you what happened next, if you believe strength always finds its way back, don't forget to subscribe and stay with me. This story's just getting started. The house always smelled like roses when my mother was alive. She believed flowers kept sadness out. After she died, the air changed. Heavy, quiet, full of perfume and dust. I was 16, old enough to understand loss, but not old enough to fight the world that came after. Her funeral was small, quiet, and polite. My father stood beside the casket, shoulders tense, his eyes hollow. He didn't cry. He just stared, like he was already somewhere else. When people left, I stayed behind, touching the coffin, My mother's ring was cold in my palm. She used to say, "Never let them take what's yours, Eve. Not your name, not your place." I didn't know then that someone was already waiting to do exactly that. 2 months later, my father introduced me to Gloria. I remember the night clearly, soft jazz playing, the smell of wine, the sound of her heels clicking on marble. She walked in like she'd always belonged there. Perfect smile, perfect posture, wearing my mother's favorite color, emerald green. "Evelyn," my father said, trying to sound cheerful. "This is Gloria. She's been helping me through a hard time. Helping him." "Right." Gloria extended her hand, her smile too sweet to trust. "I've heard so much about you," she said. Her fingers were cold when they touched mine. She looked around the house, not at the art, not at the family photos, but at the walls, the ceilings, the chandelier, like she was inspecting her next investment. Within weeks, her things began appearing everywhere. A perfume bottle in my mother's vanity, a scarf draped on the sofa. By the time summer came, half the house had changed. She replaced my mother's lace curtains with velvet, threw out her old china, and hung portraits of herself and my father smiling like newlyweds. Every change felt like a small funeral. At dinner, she'd talk about improvement. "I think the kitchen should be brighter," she said, one evening, swirling her wine. "And maybe we can get rid of that old swing set in the garden. It's childish." I didn't say anything, but I clenched my fork until my fingers hurt. My father nodded, silent, as always. He never looked at me anymore. Just her. Gloria noticed, and she used it. She started small. "You should listen to your stepmother." Then sharper. "You're old enough to stop being a burden, Evelyn." Every word chipped away at something inside me. One afternoon, I came home from school to find a pile of boxes in the hallway. All my mother's belongings, her books, her dresses, even her favorite teacup, stacked neatly like trash, waiting for pickup. I found my mother's locket in the bin. I remember my hands shaking when I picked it up. "Why did you throw this away?" I asked. My voice broke halfway through. Gloria turned from the mirror, her reflection smiling before her lips did. "Because it's old," she said calmly. "Like everything else in this house that reminds your father of her. You should be grateful. I'm helping him move forward." "Move forward?" I repeated. "By erasing her?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "By erasing pain, and maybe a few mistakes too." That night, I heard them arguing behind closed doors. My father's voice was slurred, Gloria's sharp. I heard my name, my mother's name, and the words papers, ownership, signature. I didn't understand everything they were saying, but I knew enough to realize something was being taken, something that once belonged to my mother, to us. The next morning, Gloria acted like nothing happened. She served breakfast, humming softly, but she smiled at me in a way that said she knew I'd heard. From that day, she never called me by my name again, just her. And every time she said it, I felt myself disappearing a little more. I used to count the steps from my bedroom to my mother's old study. 34, exactly. It was the only room Gloria hadn't touched, until that day. I came home from school and heard furniture scraping across the floor. When I walked in, Gloria was standing by the desk, holding a stack of papers. My mother's papers. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping closer. She didn't even look up. "Cleaning. This room's a mess." "That's not mess," I said quietly. "Those are my mother's things." She turned to me, finally meeting my eyes. "Your mother's gone, Evelyn, and this house doesn't need ghosts." Before I could respond, my father walked in, tie loose, face pale. He looked between us like he wanted to say something, but didn't have the strength. Gloria slipped the papers into a folder. "We were just talking about the house, dear. The taxes, the upkeep. It's becoming too much for us." I frowned. "Too much? It's been paid off for years." She smiled. That slow, rehearsed smile. "Oh, you think so? There's a lot you don't know, sweetheart." My father cleared his throat. "Evelyn, maybe it's time we consider selling. It's just a house. Just a house. The same house my mother designed room by room. The same house she left me in her will." "Her will," I said aloud. "She left it to me. You know that." Gloria's eyes flickered, just for a second. "That will was never legally finalized," she said smoothly. "And even if it were, you're still a minor. You can't own property. Something in my chest twisted. She was lying, but she knew how to twist the truth until it looked clean. Later that week, I found a letter from my mother's lawyer in the trash. It confirmed what I already suspected. The house was meant to transfer to me when I turned 18. But it also mentioned something I didn't understand, a trustee arrangement my mother had set up with her attorney. Something Gloria clearly didn't want me to see. When I confronted her, she didn't bother pretending anymore. She stood by the staircase, her hand on the banister like she was queen of the world. "Don't look so surprised, Evelyn," she said softly. "You were never meant to stay here." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means your father and I have decided you'll be going to live with relatives. This house needs peace, not constant reminders of the past." "My relatives? We don't even talk to them. And you'll learn to," she said. "Pack your things." I looked at my father, begging him silently to say something, anything. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just whispered, "It's for the best, Eve." That was the day's time he ever called me by my name. I remember the sound of the rain hitting the porch as I carried my suitcase out. Gloria stood at the door, arms folded, watching. When I turned back for one last look, she said, "Don't worry, dear. Someday you'll understand this was mercy." The door shut before I could answer. I walked down the street in the rain, soaked and shivering, but I didn't cry. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. My mother's words echoed in my mind, "Never let them take what's yours." And I promised her right there on that cold, wet night, I would come back. Not as the broken girl they threw out, but as the woman who'd take everything back. For years I thought about that night, the rain, the door slamming, the echo of her voice saying mercy. Mercy, that word haunted me more than the memory itself. I stayed with my mother's cousin in Portland for a while. She was kind but poor, and I learned quickly that kindness doesn't fix everything. I worked through high school, waited tables, saved every dollar I could. Some nights I'd walk past fancy houses in quiet neighborhoods and imagine standing inside again, not as a servant, but as someone who belonged. I'd picture Gloria in her silk robes, drinking wine in the living room that once smelled like roses. And I'd whisper to myself, "Enjoy it while you can." When I turned 18, I finally opened the box I'd kept hidden all those years, my mother's papers, her will, her letters, the documents Gloria tried to throw away. I didn't know much about law, but I knew one thing. My mother had been smart. She'd created a trust for the house and named her lawyer, Robert Hale, as trustee until I came of age. If the house was ever sold or transferred illegally, it could be reversed. That was my first win. I called Robert Hale's office the next morning. He was older now, his voice slow but sharp. "I always wondered what happened to you, Evelyn," he said. "Your mother trusted you'd find your way back." I told him everything, about Gloria, my father, the law. He was quiet for a long time, before replying. "Your mother added something to the trust before she died. She wanted you protected, even from your own family." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," he said, "you're not just the rightful heir. You're the silent owner. Your name was added to the title, sealed until your 25th birthday." My heart stopped. That meant the house was mine, not legally yet, but by design. And Gloria had no idea. The next few years were a blur of work and study. I got my real estate license, started small buying, fixing, selling. By 28, I had enough to buy properties most people only dreamed of. I made sure one of them was just a few blocks from my old neighborhood. Close enough to see, but far enough to watch without being seen. Then one day, I saw it in the papers. Gloria Hartson to host daughter's wedding at family estate. My old home, my mother's house, the one they'd stolen. The article described it as a symbol of grace and success. I almost laughed, grace and success built on lies. Robert Hale called me that same evening. "The trust matured," he said. "It's official now. You can take possession whenever you're ready." And that was the moment I knew. It was time to go back. Not to attend. Not to celebrate, but to remind them what they built their happiness on. I RSVP'd. Yes. Full name, no return address. I wanted to see Gloria's face when she realized the mansion she was bragging about wasn't hers anymore. The mansion looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how things that once felt enormous can shrink when you stop fearing them. It was the same white stone, the same long driveway lined with lanterns, but now it was decorated in gold ribbons and fresh lilies. I stepped out of my car, heels clicking on the cobblestone, the sound echoing like ghosts. At the entrance, a young man in a suit handed me a glass of champagne. "Welcome to the Hartson wedding," he said cheerfully. I smiled. "Oh, trust me. I've been here before." Inside, everything was dazzling. The chandeliers, the guests in pearls and silk, the soft sound of a string quartet. It almost looked perfect. Almost. Then I saw her, Gloria. She hadn't changed much. Same posture, same polished smile that never reached her eyes. She was surrounded by people, laughing like she'd earned it all. When her gaze drifted toward me, she froze for just a second. Recognition flickered, then confusion, then disbelief. "Evelyn," she said slowly, stepping forward. I didn't think you'd come." I took a sip of champagne, keeping my eyes on hers. "You invited me, remember? Or maybe your assistant did. The guest list had my name on it." Her lips twitched, that old control slipping for a fraction of a second. "Well, how lovely. I hope you're doing well." "Oh, I am," I said softly, better than ever. Across the room, I spotted her daughter, my stepsister, twirling in her wedding gown, glowing under the lights. She didn't recognize me, of course. To her, I was just another guest. But soon, everyone would remember exactly who I was. The ceremony began at sunset, all picture-perfect smiles and soft music. When the vows ended, the guests moved to the reception hall, the same one my mother used to host her charity dinners in. And there, right above the fireplace, hung a giant portrait of Gloria and her daughter, where my mother's painting used to be. That was the moment I decided to end it. I walked to the center of the hall, glass in hand. "Excuse me," I said, loud enough to quiet the room. "I'd like to make a small toast." Gloria's smile faltered. "Evelyn, this isn't—" "Oh, it'll be quick," I interrupted. "I just want to thank our gracious host for opening her home." I let the word linger. A few guests chuckled politely, unaware. Then I looked around. It's funny being back here. I used to live in this house, long before these walls were painted gold. Whispers began to ripple. Gloria took a step closer, her voice low. "That's enough." I smiled. "You're right. I should let the bride and groom enjoy their moment. But before I do, I think it's only fair to let everyone know something." I reached into my bag and pulled out a single folded document, the deed. "This house," I said, holding it up, was part of a trust my late mother created, one that transferred ownership to her only child, me, when I turned 25. The room went silent. Gloria's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she hissed. I handed the papers to Robert Hale, who'd been standing quietly at the back, watching it all unfold. He stepped forward and said, "Clear and professional. I can confirm this property legally belongs to Ms. Evelyn Hart." Gasps. A few people turned toward Gloria. Others just stared. I looked at her one last time, calm, almost gentle. "You said once I'd understand this was mercy." "You were right, because mercy is what's keeping me from throwing you out tonight." Then I smiled, placed my glass on the nearest table, and walked away as the murmurs filled the room. Behind me, I heard her voice break, for the first time in my life. The next morning, the mansion was quiet. Too quiet. I stood in the garden, sunlight breaking through the fog, dew on the roses, the same kind my mother used to plant. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt mine. Inside, the staff moved carefully, unsure of what would happen next. Gloria had locked herself in the guest room after the reception. Her daughter had left with her new husband. Embarrassed and confused, whispering apologies she didn't owe me. Robert Hale met me in the study, my mother's study, with a stack of documents. "Everything's official now," he said gently. "It's all yours, Evelyn. No one can take it again." I looked around at the shelves, the desk, the sunlight hitting the wood floor. "This room used to smell like her perfume," I said softly. "It still does," he replied. For a long time, I just stood there, remembering the 16-year-old girl who'd walked out in the rain with nothing but a suitcase and a promise. She'd been broken, scared, forgotten. And now, she'd kept her word. When I finally saw Gloria again, she was leaving. No jewelry, no arrogance, just a single suitcase and a pair of dark glasses hiding her face. She paused at the door when she saw me standing on the stairs. For once, she didn't speak first. "I suppose congratulations are in order," she said quietly. I nodded. "Not really. You already had your celebration." Her lips twitched, that same old smirk that used to make my blood boil. But this time, it faltered. "You've changed," she said. "You look like her." I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and said, "Goodbye, Gloria." She hesitated, then walked past me, heels clicking one last time down the marble floor. The sound faded, and with it, the last piece of her power. When the door closed, I finally exhaled. Later that day, I walked out to the balcony overlooking the city. The sky was wide and golden, the air warm. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I kept it, Mom. It's safe now." And for the first time in a very long time, I felt peace. I didn't win by destroying her. I won by becoming everything she said I couldn't be. Stronger, wiser, untouchable. And maybe that's the best kind of revenge. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Drama Lies and Revenge, for more emotional, twisted family stories and shocking betrayals.